And thank you for inviting me here. Such a great feeling to be with my Toastmaster friends in District 41 always. There's never been a time where I've visited a club in District 41 and I have left felt, that wasn't worth the effort. So lovely to be here and great to hear my friend Ian before me. I'm glad I joined in advance. Ian had this very beautiful talent of deconstructing what good looks like and reconstructing it back to how you can make it of your own utility. That's a skill of dissection not too many people have. So great job, Ian. And it almost felt like attending a CAT class or IIT JEE class of such mathematical way of doing it. Brilliant. I want to have a conversation with all of you. Of course, the topic is how to write a winning speech. I'll share my thoughts, but I want you to reflect along with me. And then I want to keep as much time as possible for questions and answers, as I find that gives me most energy by speaking to you rather than speaking at you. There are two kinds of storytelling typically. And after many years, I realized that, have I been mixing the two? The first type of storytelling that I've experienced, which I'm sure all of you have experienced at Toastmasters or at work especially, is the ability to take something new and make it familiar for the audience. The second type of storytelling is the ability to take something familiar and make it new to your audience. If you reflect closely at this, the first type where you have to take something new and make it familiar to the audience, it may be, say, a TED speech. A TED speaker is expected to take something that's at the edge of human thought, something you might not have heard about, research that you might not have come across, thought leadership. It could even be a presentation at work where you're not inspiring the client that love is most important. It's not something like that. You're saying something new, what's happening in the market. Your idea there, since the topic itself is new, novel, and probably not that familiar for the audience, how do I take something new and make it familiar to my audience? This has a very different way to approach it. Novelty takes precedence. Like imagine a TED speech, for example. The second type of storytelling is what Toastmasters often resort to. That's what happens in the World Championship of Public Speaking, and most often even your project speeches in your club, which is the ability to take something familiar, which everybody knows already, which everybody has a lived experience with, and make that new and insightful for the audience. That throws a different challenges in it. So you're not searching or raking your mind or reading an encyclopedia or reading new journals to find out something new that nobody knows about. You're not talking about what's the latest development in nuclear fission-based energy generation, or you're not talking about the latest mathematical formula and trying to make it familiar. Rather, you're trying to pick something that is the sense, the mood in the room, some basic human emotions and lessons of life that everybody knows, but how do you make it new, fresh, and insightful for your audience? And both of these types of storytelling require of you, from you, a different mindset, approach, and way to deliver it. Now, for example, when you take something familiar and make it new for your audience, it's a tricky business because if you don't do it well, it just looks like a repetition of what we already know. How many times in your clubs or in speech contests, a speaker has come passionately spoken about something that you anyway agree with, you know it, you have lived through that experience. So you get bored towards the first or second minute of the speech. The typical topics like bounce back from failure, do it till you are successful, love everybody. It's a repetition, isn't it? You feel it goes through one year and gets out of the other year. A more talented speaker would shift your imagining or shift your emotion from that of repetition to realization. And very same topics, bounce back from failure, or love is the ultimate cure for all evil, whatever be the typical Toastmaster topic. When some people say it, it's not repetition, it's realization. Oh man, I haven't seen it that way. Some of the world championship speeches, when you listen, the topics are very similar, but it leaves you with a feeling of, I want to go back and call my loved one and apologize. Or next day at work, I'm going to do it differently. Some of your self-help books or motivational speakers, nobody speaks something new. They say what you already know, but in a way that it sounds new and fresh and insightful for you. That's realization. Then you have those few creme de la creme who come once in a generation, say the same exact thing, but in a way, it's not a repetition or reiteration. It's not realization. It becomes a revelation for a generation. It's written as holy books and scriptures. It's written as, don't kill your enemy. Well, I know that. But when this man says it, it becomes a book followed for the next 3,000 years. So the idea, the philosophy of taking something familiar and making it new for a new set of people is an ancient art which messiahs and which leaders and masters and wise people have followed, which Toastmasters follow too. So that's the task that you're up against. How do you pick something familiar and make it new and insightful, that it's not a reiteration, but it's a realization for your audience? Now, to do that is not simple. It's not just about having a story, because just having a story could still be reiteration if you don't draw an insight from it that's sticky for your audience. Can you make them look at their own relationships in a different light through an insight you've gathered in life? Can you make them look at their own discipline and habits in a new way through an insight that you've gathered in your life? Can you make them look at their own mindset in a way that's new through an insight you've gathered in life? So the trigger there that you need to focus on is not just the story or the topic or the message, but what's the insight that's new and refreshing that they haven't thought of before. You're giving them a structure to think about things that they already know, but probably haven't had the time or have been too lazy to execute or don't have the right tools or the how to do it. So that's the topic. That's your task in a typical international speech contest or in your own club speeches at Toastmasters. Now, I can go on this forever, but I want to tell you a quick story and then open it out for questions for 10 minutes. When you're taking something familiar and trying to make it new for your audience, there's often a pressure on you, isn't it? When I look at this call, the 30 plus people here, some of you might feel how I used to feel 10 years ago. I went to my mentor 10 years ago. This was even before my first experience at the World Championship. This was back in 2010. And I spent my first 7 years in Toastmasters in leadership roles, district officer, club officer. And then 10 years ago, I realized I want to compete. But then I was stuck. I told my mentor, when I look at all these achievers who motivate people, they've all done something significant in life. And I don't have much. Unfortunately, from a Toastmaster speech point of view, I've had a decent childhood and not too many ups or downs in life. I'm an ordinary guy. I was a golden quadrilateral then, Indian IT male engineer. So what's there to talk and inspire the world being an Indian IT male engineer? My MBA professor would say Indian IT male engineers live a 1, 2, 3, 4 life. 1 wife, 2 kids, 3-bedroom flat, 4-wheeler. That's the highest level of ambition. So what am I going to speak about on a world championship stage that's new or that's insightful for the audience? My mentor at that point was in Bombay, and it was a small little office in Bandra. How many of you have been to Bombay? I don't know. If you know Bandra, yeah. Bandra is a very overhyped place. I can say that I lived in Bombay for 6 years. I take personal love for Bombay, so I can say, when you have that authority to say things, you can poke fun. So Bandra is an overhyped place. So he was his office space was in Bandra, in a dungeon like a brick building. And so he invited me there, said, I'll mentor you. You come and meet me. So I went to his office. And I told him this problem. I want to win the world championship or represent India there, but I don't have a speech that may inspire everybody. And how do I script a boring speech from my life where I haven't traveled the world, I haven't climbed the Himalayas, I haven't lost a parent? There's nothing to speak about. He said, Aditya, I'm going to prove it in the next 3 minutes that you have at least 10 world championship speeches ready. You just have to find it. I said, fine. I mean, if you're going to do that to me free of cost, be my guest, make me find 10 world champion speeches. And he said, Aditya, tell me something that you consider extraordinary or magical. I was thinking and I said, the Alps of Switzerland. When the sun shines in the dusk or the dawn on the ice-capped mountains of Switzerland, or even in north of India, it becomes golden brown and there is magic there. He said, Aditya, that's your problem. You look for the extraordinary in the extraordinary. Let me prove to you in the next 2 minutes that there is more magic in this room in Bandra than all the Alps of Switzerland. I said, what? I know you're a Mumbaiker, but don't overhype it. Huh? There's no magic here better than Switzerland. He said, hold on. He turned back, behind his desk in his office. And most office spaces have a little plant, not as big as one I have here, but a little pot which has a plant. I say plant because when I say he took pot, different audiences take it differently. So he took a plant in a pot. So he brought that plant out and he said, Aditya, every morning, 8 o'clock when I come to office, I water this plant. Where do I pour the water, Aditya? I said, duh, you pour it on the soil. He said, yes. What happens to the water? What is the journey of the water after that? I said, that's an interesting question because water defies gravity and it actually goes up into the plant from the soil. What happens after that, Aditya? Well, the water that you pour down already has defied gravity and is moving up. And then the water through the physical forces of cohesion are moved up the xylem, which is the stem of the plant. What does it do along the way, Aditya? Well, it picks the color of the soil that you've put it in originally and takes that color with it in the stem. Then what happens, Aditya? It goes into the leaves and all the stems of the plant. Then it evaporates into nature, giving the nutrients that it requires for the plant. What happens to the color of the soil? It leaves the color of the soil in the leaves. And that is why some leaves are green, some leaves are brown, some leaves are orange. And you see this beautiful plant here, Aditya. Every day, there is defying gravity. A little 200 ml of water shows magic here. Isn't that extraordinary? I said, when you say it like that, it seems so extraordinary. After all, the Swiss Alps were just ice-capped mountains with some sunlight on it. Here in this dungeon in Bandra, there is a plant where you pour water in. Wow. He says, do you remember capillary action in school? Yes. I said, I remember capillary action. This is what it is. I said, my teacher never said it that way. Well, there is extraordinary in the ordinary. Aditya, your problem, you're caught in this fix because you're looking for the extraordinary only in the extraordinary. Any person can see magic in the Alps of Switzerland. It doesn't require your eyes to see magic there. Any average Joe, any person with a gross mind can see an awesome, beautiful sunset in Goa, can see splendor in an old castle. But it takes a keen eye, an observing mind to see extraordinary behind ordinary. And if you give me a speech about the Swiss Alps, Aditya, how is it going to make me feel? I think the repetition, you already know it. You can see the extraordinary in the extraordinary. But if you tell me capillary action is the most driest subject in a dungeon in Bandra in a way that I haven't seen it before, how does it make me feel, Aditya? It makes you realize something that you haven't thought through, but know about. He said, exactly. Pick topics in life where you can help the audience see the extraordinary, not in the extraordinary, not emotion after death, not you're venturing out into something extraordinary, but something ordinary behind which lies something they haven't seen that way before. All of my speeches after that point try to tap into the extraordinary of the ordinary. Like in 2015, I talked about my car getting scratched. That's the most ordinary thing that can happen to people. But there was something extraordinary I had realized in that, which is not only do cars get scratched, we scratch people internally, emotionally. And just like a car, a scratch stays only as long as we don't polish it. Nothing great. I wouldn't have had the security to take such a message to the World Championship, but you help the audience see extraordinary in the ordinary. And that's the power of taking something familiar and making it new to the audience. Think of every successful politician. Think of generations of politicians who give election speeches and win. Have anybody said anything new? Everybody says the familiar things. If you follow the American election debates, I don't want to be controversial in India. Let's go to America. The American presidential debates. Everybody said we will cut taxes for the rich. We will elevate the middle class. We will have better immigration policy. Same story, but each time you believe it and you vote. When Obama said it, it was fresh air. When Trump said it, it was like fresh air. When Biden said it was fresh air. The ability to take something familiar and make it sound new is both a devious dark art that politicians use, as well as a tool for good, which we Toastmasters can use. So think of it. I've kind of allowed for more reflection than a 5-point formula of how to win the World Championship. But that's the magic behind every good speech. I'm going to pause now. I think we have 5 minutes left, and I'll be happy to take questions about what I spoke or about anything else that you may want to ask. Don't restrict yourself.
Okay, Toastmaster Kirtiraj wants to ask. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Ipshit. Distinguished Toastmaster Aditya, my query for you is, whenever we deliver any kind of speech, there is always one kind of aspect that we have to have some kind of call to action for the audience, right? Say if we are giving a particular speech and then it has a powerful message, still there's something which they should remember after you are off the stage, something which sets in them and something which they always take back as a lesson from that particular 5 to 7 minutes of what you deliver. So how to improvise on that particular aspect and how to be in that kind of a zone where people actually learn from your journey. It should not be just like, okay, you have delivered a powerful speech, but then it should have something where they take back and it should lead to a blossoming of their existence, like a lotus. Request for guidance.
You've just given me a mini Toastmaster speech there with props and with call to action, and you're all right. I don't know whether the question made you choose the prop or the prop made you choose the question, but nevertheless, right. So often, Kirtiraj, the blind spot for us speakers is that we assume call to action is just what should the audience do at the end of my speech. A wiser speaker would ask himself or herself, what should I make the audience think, feel, do, and say as a result of my speech? Call to action is not just the doing bit. Call to action is reverse engineering a process where this is what you want the audience to feel at the end of the speech, think at the end of the speech, say at the end of the speech about it, and do at the end of the speech. So it need not always be they need to go donate blood at the end of the speech. They need to go fill out a development plan for themselves at the end of the speech. It's not just the do. Some speeches are subtle. It doesn't need to be followed by action. But call to action is also what are you calling on them to feel at the end of the speech, right? So there needs to be clarity beforehand on what emotion am I leaving my audience with? It could be the same topic, right? You may take it humorously. That means you want to leave the audience with a feeling of, feeling of entertainment, feeling of feeling good about themselves. Or sometimes you want the audience to feel deep reflection at the end of the speech. So your own clarity of call to action starts with expanding what you define by that. Some of your speeches don't have a physical call to action. It's okay, as long as if you're leaving the audience to think and mull over a particular topic, right? So more practically, call to action is very important. I agree with you, but expand the definition of that to think, feel, do, and say as a result. If they were to summarize your speech in 5 words to somebody else, what should they be saying? And am I offering them easy fodder for them to summarize to another person? That's also a call to action.
I think Toastmaster Chintan is next. Chintan, you can go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toastmaster Ipsit, and distinguished Toastmaster Aditya. It's been a dream come true and honor to speak with you directly. So first of all, I am very new to the arena of Toastmaster, a 1 month old, but it's a lifelong dream of mine to become a public speaker and orator. I have been following the world champions since I don't know how many years. I have the stories in me. I have the extraordinary, and as you made me realize that I have the ordinary things to make extraordinary. But I want to know the process, that how you view the story, how the polished words come from. So can you give us all the material or resources or books which you referred at the initial stage, which led you to such kind of stories? Because one of your speech, that lose yourself, made an impression that I remember each word and I can recite entirely. So that kind of impact, I don't know how it comes from, and made such a succinct message in this definite time frame. I think the words which you chose were very profound. So can you just enlighten all of us for that?
Sure. Well, that may take an hour, so I'm just going to give you a 30-second, 1-minute summary. One of the simplest thing you can do, Chintan, for your own helping yourself, is don't complicate things for yourself, right? And that starts with the structure of your speech. Once you get the overall scaffolding of the speech right, then content is simple. The words are simple. Content is not. The words are simple. I'll give you an example. You talked about lost and found. It seems like a pretty complicated structure because I speak of a lot of examples. But at its heart, it's like an if loop. I start with my opening a loop about childhood, then getting into some other habit. Then I get into my time with my mentor. Then I close the loop of the mentor, close the loop of the habit, close the loop of the childhood. It's a very simple structure. So you're just opening a few things, then talking about where your life changed and closing those loops again. And at an even more simple level, a very simple Toastmaster structure is what I call then, how, now. I mean, you don't need to follow these as rules, but just start with these. You find your ideas falling in place. What is then, now, how? How was I then? And what were the reasons my life wasn't going too well? The how, what happened and who was there, an event or a person that changed my perspective about the then. And now, how am I now and how has that changed my life? Every Toastmaster speech is a then, how, now speech. Verity Price, who won the world championship a few weeks ago, take her speech. I'm doing this impromptu, but take the speech. So how was I then? I was living with my sister at the age of 40 when I had my own dreams. Then, how? My father had taught me that I can write my own speech, and he demonstrated that in his own life. And now, I'm independent. I have a child at 44, and I'm following my dreams. Same formula. It is not apparent. It seems fresh and new. Same formula. Mohammed Katani, same formula. Dhananjay Hetirachi, same formula. I was broke. I was lost. Then my mentor told me, I see something in you, the how. And now I'm following my dreams. I'm a teacher. So don't complicate of what should be my introduction body. First, just take a then, how, now formula for the story that you're talking about, Chintan. Then you would find it's a 3 mini stories in your speech. Can I craft just 150 words about my then? It's very simple, Chintan. 150 words is smaller than a blog post. Can I craft a small story about the how? Can I craft a small story about my current situation? And now there are 3 small stories. How can I weave them together? The audience may not see it as then, how, now, but you're making life simple for yourself. And then if you're just crafting 350 word stories, just focus on that one story for a week, just 1 out of the 3 stories. And then try to work on humor, work on words, work on impact. If you take the entire speech, it kind of mind numbs you and it makes it difficult for you to crack it. So start with making things simpler for you, not more complicated for you. A then, a how, a now, matter over, right? Hope that helps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Now we have 2 more questions, last 2 questions. Toastmaster Utkarsh and followed by Toastmaster Bharat. Toastmaster Utkarsh, you can go ahead and ask the question.
Sure. Thank you so much, Toastmaster Ipshit. Well, DTM Adit, I must say it's a relief to finally hear from someone. First of all, I'm also from the same quadrilateral male IT engineer and so stuff. But yeah, I used to regularly being, pestered by this thought of that. Why do not I have such, incidents that can actually, turn out to be good speeches? So my question specifically is that I've heard that there are stories. To write a good speech, if you want to include stories in your speech, you must have a conflict and you should know how to address it. My question to you is, what if I do not have a significant turning point in my story that gives me that realization? And what if that realization is not persuading enough to my audience? Because if it is not enough persuasive for me also, how can I do it to others? So my question to you is that what if I'm not able to find out that turning point in my story, and how do I put it forward to my audience?
Thanks, Utkarsh. It's a great question. So if the claim is that in, I don't know your age, but I'm assuming say 30. I'm sorry if it's more than what you are. You probably look 18, but I'm going to say 30 for the average age benefit. If the claim is that there's been nothing significant happened in your life that can be worthy or useful for others, you haven't looked deep enough in your life, right? And you haven't culled out insights from ordinary things. A car getting scratched, come on, you can't say a car has not got scratched, you're something else, your iPhone hasn't fallen down. Let me give you an example about, if the audience psychology is the most important to understand in any form of speaking, not just Toastmasters. If you tell an audience that, do you know, in World War II, 10 million people died in a massacre, it's a statistic for the audience. If you tell the audience, this morning as I was hurrying to the speech, my iPhone fell down and it got scratched, the audience will give you a gasp. The audience are not mean, devilish people to say 6 million people dying are, but iPhone getting scratched. They're not mean. It's just that the human psyche understands the zeitgeist more than past event. What's the zeitgeist? Zeitgeist is the sense of the current. So you may also want to tie up your events to what the zeitgeist is and to add to that impact, Utkarsh. For example, I remember after the unfortunate Nirbhaya incident in India, I think 9 years ago, there was a slew of speeches that talked about women's safety. And each of them was suddenly so inspiring and jaw-dropping, at least personally for me. 5 years earlier to that, there was literally no speeches about that. Was the topic unimportant? Of course it was important. But a speech on that would be like, yeah, but we know that types, right? We know women's safety is important. But come Nirbhaya, speeches that were winning are speeches that talked about the raw emotion of how half the population of the world, women, if they don't feel safe, What's the point of all of law enforcement and stuff? Suddenly, it brought a tear. It choked the audience. It called people to personal action and societal action. So what you're doing is you may take something, a small incident from your life, but if you connect it to the zeitgeist, or what's the sense of the world, what's happening around you? If you're speaking at a conference, what's the theme of the conference? What are people here in general coming to? What happened that morning? Did something interesting happen that morning? Was there an election the previous night which was fought so hard that a 2-hour election became a 6-hour election? What does that tell you about human psyche and need for power and all of that? Is that something that you want to talk about in your speech? In my 2015 World Championship, as I was getting into the hall, there was this one poor sergeant at arms standing at the door who had to ensure 3,000 people don't get in. They only get in on time. They were literally harassing the sergeant at arms, and I could see a tear in his eye. So when I was on stage talking about Scratch, at that instant, few minutes ago, I decided I'm going to take a part of my speech out and going to replace it by, when was the last time you scratched someone? Probably 20 minutes ago. That sergeant at arms wouldn't allow you to get in because you came in late. Scratch. And I got an 11-second applause impromptu. Not because that was a great line, not because sergeant at arms' feelings are more important than people dying. It's because the zeitgeist, they could relate to that because they were at fault. They can't relate to World War II because that's just sympathy, but here it was empathy. So these are ways to elevate your ordinary to amplify the impact that you can create on your audience.
Thank you so much. Again, we have our last question before we move on to the next section. Toastmaster Vaha, you can ask your question now.
So much. I genuinely feel I know you a little more right now. So I've heard a little about you from DTM Deepak. I think he was there with you when you were going to deliver your speech in 2015. So I've heard little instances about you. But my question, there are two parts of it. The first one is, I'm sure you must have had about 10 topics that you would have finalized, and out of then you would have, filtered down to the one for the final speech. How did you do that? Because even now, if I think of certain ideas, I have 10 ideas, but I get confused in which topic should I actually pick up and speak about in my next speech. And my second question is, from 2015 to 2021, how as a person and as a speaker, you have developed and transformed in parts of your perspective, in terms of your speech delivery, that could really help us. Thank you.
Right. So you're an intelligent Toastmaster. You're given one question, you fit both into it. And by the way, I could see JPKU in your name. So JPKU is close to my heart because Deepak is close to my heart. So I have it's partiality towards JPKU Toastmasters and their members. All right. So how do you choose topics? People often, obviously, when they come from mentoring and other things, the first thing they ask is, Aditya, I have this topic. Will it win the world championship? And often my answer is, I don't know. Because the same kind of topic that loses, say, communication is important. It's a topic that loses at a club level, but it also won Mohammad Kathani the world championship. All he was talking about is the fact that words are important. 2015, the guy who won it. So when somebody asks, I have 10 topics, which of the 3 I should pick up? I'm totally lost. I become the worst mentor in the world because honestly, I have no clue. Any topic can win or lose at any level. Topics don't win contests. It's the insight that you cull out of it that win contests, and the way you present it that win contests, right? So Bahar, I may suggest that you focus less on how unique or awesome the topic is, and more about where is it you have most conviction on, that your lived experience. It may look ordinary, but that conviction that backs it makes you feel confident to put it out there in the world on YouTube, for example. I ask myself this. I may win the world championship, but how ashamed or not will I be to put that speech out there on YouTube and share it with my old school friends who don't know me as a Toastmaster, who know me as a friend. Initially in Toastmasters, I would say, I can speak well at Toastmasters, but I hope my school friends don't come and see me, see the speech. They would be like, dude, what's wrong with you? What's happening? You're like a proper human being outside, and here you become some kind of a actor on stage. So then I had to reconcile that personality, saying a good speech should be a good speech. Like how I'm talking to you, it's the same way I talk on stage. And my litmus test is, can this topic, can this message, can the way I speak, can I send it to my old school friends? And if they don't feel embarrassed, and in fact, they say, dude, that was something insightful, there is nobody, then I can be confident that the entire world will like this speech. So my offer to you is, don't spend too much time on whether it should be about love, whether it should be about failure, whether it should be about this topic. Rather go with where you have the most personal conviction on. Where do you feel that, listen, I may not be a PhD, but in this emotion, in this message, I have as much of lived experience as a Harvard professor dissecting that emotion, because I have lived through it. Nobody can say wrong. Nobody can say research shows otherwise, because I have felt it. I have lived through it, right? No Harvard professor can say, but research shows that 300. So I don't care, but this is my lived experience. So truth is always in your lived experience. Nobody can go against it. If I speak of whether radiation causes cancer, 5 researchers can say 5 different opinions. Truth may not lie with me, but emotion, lived experience, yes. So go with your conviction. And my own journey, a second question from 2015 to 2021, I believe that I've been fortunate to pay the same renewal fee at Toastmasters, which is $45. And I've had access to a much more plethora of opportunities for the same renewal fee. 3 times at the World Championship, district officer role, leadership roles. But the thing that changed me, because you said Deepak, Bahar, I'm going to conclude with Deepak. I was having a conversation. You meant Deepak Menon, right? Yeah, we don't want to talk about 2 different Deepaks. Yeah, I was talking to Deepak, and Deepak, the extraordinary, my beloved friend Deepak. So he, in 2016, he was the international director at Toastmasters. And I was speaking to him. I was already first runner-up. I was already a district officer and all of that. He said, Aditya, I'm part of 4 Toastmaster clubs, and I'm the sergeant at arms of a club. And I said, Deepak, you are the international director of Toastmasters. Are you also a sergeant at arms? He said, yes, I'm a sergeant at arms and I love it. Why? Because it makes me learn, keeps me agile. It helps me serve my club. And I was like, wow. So when I moved to London in 2018, I wanted to start new, not with the baggage of DTM and all of those names and badges and keynotes and first world championship, whatever. So I went and enrolled into a very small club, little known club, just 12, 13 members, and became a sergeant at arms and then a treasurer of the club. 2 years I served as a treasurer, a sergeant at arms, and became a president of the club. And that made me renew my commitment to myself. The same Aditya at the age of 19 in 2005 or 6 who joined Toastmasters. I had lost that passion to learn and learn from every opportunity, but this allowed me to renew my commitment. So I would say after World Champion has only been greater learning for me, but that needs to come from a space where you want to improve, not prove to the world. If you want to prove you're good, you're only going to look at better and better opportunities. If you want to improve, you look at what's meaningful for you. So I think I've got a lot of meaning through this journey. And I've probably, I would say, changed not only as a speaker, but a person. Hope that answers your question. Back to you, Ipsit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aditya, for that wonderful session. And it's always lovely to hear you. I remember one of the very first speeches in Toastmasters was the speech that you gave in your World Championship about the scratch. And I still remember the content. That's the impact that the speech had on me, you and distinguished Toastmaster Mohammad Khatani's both of the speech. And even I remember Toastmaster Manoj Vasudevan's speech as well. I think all 3 of you were on the same stage delivering the speech, and that inspired me to join Toastmasters.